OpenAI just dropped GPT 5.3 Instant yesterday, and if you use ChatGPT for work, this changes everything. No more take-a-breath lectures, no more refusing perfectly normal requests. I've been testing it since the release, and the hallucination rate dropped 27% while it finally stopped talking like your therapist. So in this video, I'm breaking down everything in this brand new release. What actually changed, why it matters for your daily workflow, and the real performance differences I found testing it against the old version. Let's start with the biggest fix everyone's been asking for. The cringe problem. So here's what OpenAI fixed less than 24 hours ago. If you've used ChatGPT over the past few months, you know exactly what I'm talking about. GPT 5.2 had this really annoying habit of acting like your therapist when you just wanted a straight answer. You'd ask it something perfectly reasonable, and it would come back with, "Stop, take a breath." Or launch into emotional preambles about how you're not broken before finally getting to your question. OpenAI actually acknowledged this in their official announcement. They used the word cringe to describe their own model's behavior. That's how bad it got. GPT 5.3 Instant completely strips out that behavior. I've been testing it since yesterday's release with questions that used to trigger those responses, and the difference is night and day. Where GPT 5.2 would have given you a paragraph of reassurance before answering, GPT 5.3 just answers. No fluff. No presumptions about your emotional state. Just the information you asked for. The tone is still warm and conversational. It's not cold or robotic. It just doesn't treat you like you're having a crisis every time you ask a question. And that shift makes ChatGPT feel like it's finally respecting your time and intelligence. Fewer unnecessary refusals. Now let's talk about refusals. GPT 5.2 had this tendency to say, "I can't help with that," for things it absolutely could help with. It was playing it safe to an almost ridiculous degree. GPT 5.3 Instant significantly reduces these unnecessary refusals. According to OpenAI's own data, the new model is way more willing to engage when it can safely do so. Instead of defaulting to no, it defaults to yes, here's how. I tested this with various edge case questions since the model went live yesterday, the kind that GPT 5.2 would usually reject. In most cases, GPT 5.3 found a way to provide useful information without crossing any actual safety boundaries. It's not that the model is less safe, it's that it's smarter about distinguishing between genuinely harmful requests and questions that just need some nuance. The practical impact? If you're using ChatGPT for research, writing, or problem solving, you're going to hit far fewer dead ends. The conversation keeps moving forward instead of constantly bumping into walls that didn't need to be there. But wait until you see what they did with web search integration. Smarter web integration. One of the biggest complaints about GPT 5.2 was how it handled web information. It would either ignore the internet entirely or dump a wall of links and bullet points at you without any real synthesis. GPT 5.3 Instant completely reimagines this. Instead of choosing between its internal knowledge and web search, it blends them together intelligently. Microsoft describes it as balancing what it finds online with its own knowledge and reasoning. In practice, you get answers that are both current and contextual. When you ask about something recent, GPT 5.3 will search for the latest information, but instead of just quoting articles, it synthesizes that data with what it already knows. The result is an answer that's comprehensive, relevant, and actually addresses what you're asking instead of what some headline writer thought was important. I found this particularly useful for technical questions where context matters. Ask GPT 5.2 about a new technology, and you'd get surface-level snippets. Ask GPT 5.3 the same question, and you get an explanation that incorporates those updates, but also connects them to broader concepts. The speed hasn't changed either. Despite doing more sophisticated reasoning, GPT 5.3 Instant still lives up to its name. This next part is probably the most important improvement though, especially if you're using ChatGPT for anything where accuracy actually matters. The Hallucination Fix. Let's address the elephant in the room: AI hallucinations. Every chatbot sometimes makes stuff up, stating complete fiction as fact. GPT 5.2 was no exception. GPT 5.3 Instant makes dramatic improvements here. In OpenAI's evaluation, using web sources cut hallucinations by 26.8% compared to GPT 5.2. Even without browsing the web, running purely on internal knowledge, hallucinations still dropped by nearly 20%. User-reported cases showed similar results. Errors fell by about 22 to 23% when browsing. Now, does this mean GPT 5.3 is perfect and never makes mistakes? Absolutely not. But the frequency has dropped significantly enough that you can trust it more for factual queries. If you're researching medical information, legal concepts, or historical events, you're much less likely to get confidently stated nonsense. The reason? OpenAI explicitly shifted focus from pure speed to accuracy with this release. In practical terms, this means you spend less time fact-checking everything the model tells you. I ran some comparison tests, asking both GPT 5.2 and GPT 5.3 the same factual questions. GPT 5.2 would occasionally slip in plausible-sounding but completely wrong details. GPT 5.3 was far more careful, and when it wasn't certain about something, it was more likely to say so rather than making something up. And this connects directly to something else that's improved significantly: the writing quality. Better writing and creativity. GPT 5.3 doesn't just give you more accurate answers, it gives you better written answers. OpenAI demonstrated this with a side-by-side comparison of poems generated by GPT 5.2 versus GPT 5.3. The difference was striking. GPT 5.3's poem was described as more lived-in, specific, and structurally controlled, while GPT 5.2's attempt felt more abstract and generic. This improvement extends to any creative or expressive task. Whether you're drafting a story, refining a report, composing an email, or brainstorming marketing copy, GPT 5.3 produces prose with more detail, nuance, and emotional depth. The model can now switch between practical and imaginative writing more fluidly. GPT 5.3 understands the subtext of your request more effectively. It picks up on what kind of tone you want, what level of detail you need, and what style fits the situation. I tested this by asking for the same content in different styles. Write this as a professional email versus write this as a casual message to a friend. GPT 5.3 nailed the distinctions in ways that felt natural and appropriate. OpenAI also mentions that the model's personality is more consistent now. You'll get the same style and approach from conversation to conversation, which makes the experience more predictable and reliable. But here's something important. All these improvements come with a slight trade-off. Safety trade-off. OpenAI was transparent about this. Some very challenging content moderation tests showed GPT 5.3 performing slightly worse than GPT 5.2. We're talking about extreme edge cases where the model is being tested for how it handles truly harmful content requests. For the vast majority of users, this won't ever come up. OpenAI emphasizes that the overall user experience gains far outweigh these marginal differences. The model is still safe for general use. It's just less overly cautious than GPT 5.2 was. This is actually the intended design. GPT 5.2 was so aggressive about safety that it refused benign requests unnecessarily. GPT 5.3 finds a better balance. It's still protective about genuinely harmful content, but it doesn't treat every question like a potential minefield. For everyday tasks, research, writing, and problem solving, the new balance is far more practical. Now let's talk about how you actually get access to all this. How to access GPT 5.3 Instant. The best part, you already have access right now. As of yesterday's release, GPT 5.3 Instant is the default model for all ChatGPT users. If you log into ChatGPT on the web or mobile app right now, you're already using it. Free users can send up to 10 messages with GPT 5.3 every 5 hours. After that, ChatGPT temporarily switches to a smaller model until the window resets. ChatGPT Plus or Go users get 160 messages per 3 hours. Business and enterprise users get essentially unlimited access. Developers have access too through the OpenAI API. The model is identified as GPT 5.3 Chat Latest. Any application using GPT 5.2 can switch to 5.3 by updating the model name. Microsoft 365 Copilot users are also getting GPT 5.3 Instant automatically. As of yesterday, Copilot in Word, Excel, Teams, and other Office apps uses GPT 5.3 for quick responses. Microsoft describes this as making Copilot more reliably accurate with more direct, useful answers. All of ChatGPT's existing features still work with GPT 5.3. Web browsing, code interpreter, image analysis, file uploads, memory, custom instructions, everything is compatible. The model handles info-seeking questions, how-to guides, technical writing, and translation better than GPT 5.2, all while keeping that warmer, more conversational tone. One thing to note, GPT 5.2 Instant is sticking around temporarily through June 3, 2026, for anyone who wants to keep using it during the transition. After that, it's retired completely. What this means for you. So what does all this actually mean in practical terms? You're getting sharper answers with less fluff. The model gets to the point faster and stops wasting your time with unnecessary disclaimers and emotional commentary. The tone is more natural and consistent. ChatGPT now sounds like a knowledgeable colleague who respects your intelligence and just wants to help you get things done. You're going to encounter fewer mistakes. The hallucination reduction alone makes GPT 5.3 substantially more trustworthy for factual queries. Better context use means more relevant answers right away. When you ask about something specific or recent, GPT 5.3 weaves in fresh information smoothly instead of dumping raw search results on you. And you get all these benefits on the same ChatGPT interface you've been using. No new apps to learn, no extra setup required. Just better performance under the hood. Whether you're asking simple questions, brainstorming ideas, or working on complex projects, GPT 5.3 Instant makes the conversation smoother. It's not a revolutionary leap, but it's a meaningful upgrade that makes ChatGPT feel more helpful and less frustrating. GPT 5.3 Instant isn't perfect. It still makes mistakes. It can still hallucinate. But it's substantially better than what came before, in ways that actually matter for daily use. It went live yesterday, so you can test it yourself right now. If you've been frustrated with ChatGPT lately, open it up and see the difference. The change in tone alone is immediately noticeable. Drop a comment and let me know what you think after testing GPT 5.3 Instant. Have you noticed the improvements in your first sessions? I'm curious to hear your early impressions with this fresh release. And if this breakdown helped you understand what changed, consider subscribing. I'll keep covering the latest AI updates as they drop. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.